Hi there, Smart Drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking tonight about big trucks and cars and the wars between these two people. And there was a video that I released, a short, about a big truck that was trying to pass a car. Couldn't get past the car because the truck was governed, and the car paced the truck for a long time, and then the truck tried to move back over, signaled for a very long period of time, and of course, the debate has been raging here on social media, here on both on YouTube and over at TikTok. Some say the car is completely wrong, and others say that the truck is completely wrong, and the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle of that spectrum. So this week, that's what we're talking about. I'm going to give you some information about big trucks. The no zone, know that big trucks have large blind areas, and to keep yourself safe when you're driving on freeways, highways, and around big trucks in industrial areas and those types of things. Mallory is here from the Maritime. Salty Nuts is here. How are you? And yes, big trucks, truck drivers, CDL drivers, semi-truck drivers call cars four-wheelers. They call 5 tons 10-wheelers. Lots of different names in the trucking industry for different things. Flat decks, vans, those types of things. My friend Joe is here. Hello from Toronto. Said it's not muggy anymore in Toronto. Summer is definitely over. We got a bit of rain here yesterday, which was nice. Kind of ended all the brown grass and everything else here in the Okanagan. Elevator is here, tuning in from Monticello, Indiana. Great place. My friend Tim from Drive Smart BC. If you're in the province of British Columbia and want to know more about the topic of traffic safety, road engineering, policing, court cases in regards to traffic and anything to do with roadways and whatnot, definitely check out Drive Smart BC, and as well there's an excellent forum over there you can talk to and engage with other traffic safety authorities. So check out Drive Smart BC. And Elevator, hello. I already said that. Yes, Jessica's tuning in. Hello there. And if you're just tuning in, let us know where you're tuning in from, what license you are working towards. We'll definitely answer any questions about passing a driver's test, helping you to become a safer, smarter driver, and making you a professional, which has been something else that has been leveled against truck drivers. Abigail is here, tuning in from the Mission. And so if you're tuning in, watching on the replay, leave a comment down in the comment section there, and we'll do what we can to help you out with all of this. All right, so me personally, I have driven trucks, so I've had it leveled at me that I don't know anything about truck drivers, and I do very much know about truck drivers. One of the things that I learned here, I put up a video yesterday about a truck driver that was insisting on being in the hammer lane on a hill despite being empty, and lots of people said that the truck had every right to be in the passing lane. And I discovered that it's pretty much the same on social media as it is in real life, that if you're sitting in the passenger seat of somebody's car and you're a driving instructor, don't say anything to the person who's driving unless you're being paid. And it is the same on social media, because I had a lot of people take me to task on that, and probably say some not nice things about me. But anyway, I do know what I'm talking about, and as far as I'm concerned, if it's 3 lanes, trucks should be limited to the 2 right lanes. They should not be out in that third passing lane. That's for cars. All right, so with further ado, let's get over to the presentation. We'll get through that, and then we'll come back and we'll answer any questions you have about passing a driver's test, becoming a safer, smarter driver, or starting a career as a truck or bus driver. Mallory says it rained there in the Maritimes, and it's going to rain more tonight and tomorrow. Well, that's, pretty much going into fall here, both on the West Coast, the central provinces, central states in the U.S., and on the East Coast. So it's coming. We're starting to wear jackets in the summertime, or in the morning rather, not in the summertime. All right. Bear with me. So we're getting over here to Car Wars, trucks versus cars, and it really should be trucks versus cars. That should be what the title was, yes, because a lot of truck drivers are very much irked by what cars do, and motorcycles and other pedestrians, cyclists, all kinds of different road users on the roadway. For those of you new to Smart Drive Test, my name is Rick August. I was a truck driver in the 1990s, hauling LTL freight between Ontario, Canada, and the United States, mostly the eastern seaboard, everything east of the Mississippi. I did make it out to the western states and the Midwest quite a number of times, but mostly into New England and the eastern seaboard and down into Florida and whatnot. Early 2000s, while I was going to university, I drove for Greyhound as well, so I have bus experience, coach experience, driving between Melbourne, Australia, Sydney, Australia, and the outback of New South Wales to parks there. Became a licensed commercial driving instructor in 1997 in a bid to come off the roadway. 2006, after returning to university, finishing my undergraduate, and then going on to do a graduate degree, I graduated from the University of Melbourne with my doctorate degree. 2015 started the YouTube channel, and it's been wildly more successful than I could have imagined. As I said, this month we're going to hit 250,000 subscribers, and the numbers have really been up the last couple of weeks. Not really sure what's happening with the channel. Hopefully, maybe, YouTube has found us and is kicking us into high gear. So that's doing really well, and it's nice to see. And if you want to know more about me and know more about the Smart Drive Test YouTube channel, you can check that over at the Smart Drive Test website. Great stuff to look at. The short semi-truck cuts off cars. This video is done really well, 300,000 views on TikTok, and it's up to 60,000 views here on YouTube. So that short is doing exceptionally well. And then check out the podcasts over at the Smart Drive Test website as well. Please pull you over and you'll get the exact step-by-step instructions on what to do over there with the podcast if you are pulled over by the police. Tim, I'll answer your question here in just a minute, okay, my friend? Let me get through the presentation. Just ask me again when we're done here. All right, so truck driving. Romanticization of truck driving has definitely happened in movies and on television. And for those of you who are my vintage and grew up working class, blue collar, you definitely watched Smokey and the Bandit, BJ and the Bear, Convoy. These were all movies on the television and in the movie theaters that we went to and watched probably over and over again. I could probably say I've seen Smokey and the Bandit probably 50 times. And the trucks were something that we traded pictures of when I was in grade school. And in the late 1990s, Patrick Swayze starred in the movie Black Dog, which you may or may not have seen. And lots of people go to truck driving school because they want to learn how to drive a truck. They don't want to drive a truck. They just want to learn how to drive a truck because they think it's absolutely cool. So many people think that trucks are awesome. And there was a time that truck driving was a good job that you could do. Unfortunately, what happened was the industry became deregulated in the 1980s and into the 1990s. More and more trucks poured onto our roadways. As well, you had something in the 1990s created called just-in-time freight, JIT freight. And rather than large automobile companies and other companies who manufactured products having raw materials stored in huge warehouses, what they did was they woke up one day and realized that they could sell off this real estate, sell off their warehouses, and they could warehouse this product on trucks going up and down the roadway. So the automobile company needed 1,000 mufflers for the assembly line at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So they would call up the manufacturer of the mufflers and they would say, listen, we need 3,000 mufflers this afternoon at 3 o'clock. They'd put them on trucks and they would go up and down the highway and they would arrive at the assembly plant at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So what happened was that we put tens of thousands of trucks on our roadways in the 1990s. And the number of trucks has not been reduced. And just to give you some idea of how many trucks are actually on the roadway, in the 1990s, Schneider National, which is a huge company in the United States out of Green Bay, Wisconsin, in the 1990s, they had 50,000 trailers and 15,000 tractors, and they have grown since then. That was 30 years ago. So that gives, and so 50,000 trailers, 15,000 tractors, towing units, and they only comprise 2% of the trucking industry. So that gives you some idea how absolutely big the trucking industry is in the United States and Canada, North America, and around the world. So these are the two video topics. Semi-truck cuts off car. Did the semi-truck cut off the car and then get out of the hammer lane? The truck going up the hill there, this was yesterday, I posted this video, and as I said, a lot of people felt that the truck should had every right to be in the left-hand lane. Well, personally, I don't think so. I think they should be over in the right-hand lane or the middle lane, not blocking traffic flow. So, social driving. This comes down to social driving, and this is the wars between different road user groups. Cars versus pedestrian, cars versus cyclists, motorcycles versus cars, trucks versus cars, and this is one battle zone that we're going to talk about today in terms of trucks versus cars. So it very much fits in with the problem of social driving that I've talked about before, and the tools that you use to face the challenges of social driving: space management, speed management, observation, and communication. So trucks are different. They're very, very different. Your average automobile on the roadway weighs about 3,000 pounds. The average truck in the United States weighs 80,000 pounds. And here in Canada, the average tandem truck weighs 90,000 to 140,000 pounds. So they weigh anywhere from 30 to 50 times more than what your car weighs. They have slow acceleration off the line because, of course, you have to get all of that weight moving. They have a longer distance to stop, and because of their size, these trucks have huge blind areas around them into which the drivers cannot see. And this is what's called the no zone. This is the places you don't drive. It's recommended by any traffic safety authority not to hang out next to big trucks. Not only that, if you're driving in inclement weather, the amount of spray coming off these big trucks is just incredible. So they need more room to turn. They need more room to maneuver. So we do ask for car drivers to give them lots of space when they're near them and they're backing in or trying to turn or those types of things. Things that most car drivers don't know about big trucks. Most company trucks, if not all company trucks, are governed. They're speed governed, and they only do about 60 miles an hour. I've had a few people take me to task and say, no, that's not true. I would say that it's about 80%. So 20% of the trucks are not governed and 80% of the trucks are governed. And the reason that they're speed governed is because of fuel costs. This is the other fact that, for whatever reason, is never put out into public knowledge, is the fact that these big semi-trucks only get 6 to 7 miles to the gallon. And if anybody tells you that they're getting better than that, well, they're probably not telling you the truth. Because in my experience, in all the years that I've been driving, I drove through most of the 1990s. I never really had a truck that got better than 6.5. And I went back trucking in 2016, and they were still getting 6.5, 7 miles to the gallon, which is 39 to 33 liters per 100 kilometers. Huge consumption of fuel. And if you want to know why we're having inflation right now and the cost of living has gone up, this is why: because of the cost of fuel. The cost of fuel has gone up, and it costs more to put these trucks up and down the road. So if the trucks are going faster than 60 miles an hour, this fuel economy is going to significantly decrease. Fuel and wages are trucking companies' biggest expense amongst everything else. And you figure that one of these road tractors, if it's got a sleeper on the back of it, these things, just the cab, not the trailer, just the cab runs in at about $150,000 in this day and age. So they're expensive pieces of machinery. One of the things in the video where the truck was trying to pass the little car and couldn't get past the little car because the little car was pacing it. The other thing is that truck was governed. And the reason that the truck got out into the passing lane was because the little car was varying its speed all the time. 60 miles an hour, 62, 65, 55 miles an hour, 58 miles an hour. And I know this for a fact because I went to Ontario. I did a lot of driving on highways, and people do not maintain a constant speed on the highway. They're up and they're down, and they're up and they're down, and they're up and they're down. And there's nothing more frustrating when you're trying to drive on a freeway or a highway and people cannot maintain a constant speed. That is what cruise control is for. And I did a poll on the weekend on who uses cruise control, and it completely verified what I was thinking in terms of the number of people who use cruise control. Only about 20% of people who drive use cruise control, and I would probably argue that that's probably even a little bit high. 50% of drivers don't even use it. 15% of drivers don't even know what it is, and sometimes they use it, which means that most of the time they can't be bothered. So very few people use it. So most people are varying in speed. And one of the types of cruise controls, the new technologies has come out that has helped to combat this frustration with truck drivers and other drivers such as myself, is adaptive cruise control, which will set a following distance. So it'll pace the other car, but it'll maintain that safe following distance of 2, 4, or 6 seconds behind the other vehicle. So if you don't know how to use cruise control, I do encourage you to use cruise control to not only increase your fuel economy, reduce the amount of frustration on the other part of drivers, but also cruise control will reduce distractions when you're driving, because you don't have to monitor your speed. You can simply set the cruise control and forget about it and concentrate on driving. So, ignorance or arrogance. This was the thing that I asked about the truck passing the car, and then it kind of put its signal on, and after a period of time of having its signal on, pushed over and got the little car out of the way. And I like the comments on this, lots of comments about this. Of course, some of them are, the truck is 100% at fault, the car is 100% at fault, and other people say the car is either on its phone or completely distracted, hanging out there beside the truck. An interesting one that I hadn't heard before was that people who are using their phones and distracted driving are using trucks to pace themselves while going up and down the highway, because they can see the big truck in the corner of their eye. So they're using that as a landmark to keep themselves on the road while they're distracted driving. And personally, I think that's a little bit like base jumping without a parachute. You really are putting a great deal of faith in the truck driver who could be in any sort of condition and is driving. So the other two suggestions about the passing and the truck being limited in terms of speed was that the truck driver could have slowed down. Yes, the truck driver could have slowed down. The car could have slowed down. And the piece about the truck, and this is the reason I know that the truck driver didn't slow down and pull in behind the car, was because the car wasn't doing a constant speed. The truck driver's up against the governor doing 60 miles an hour, and they want to do that constant speed because when you're doing 500 or 600 miles a day, you want to maintain the highest average speed possible. So you're trying to stay up against the top of that governor all the time. But the car in front of you is up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down, and it's incredibly frustrating when you're in a big truck trying to do 60 miles an hour on average, and the car in front of you is up and down. But you can't get past them because the truck is speed limited. So this is what happened with the car and the big truck trying to get past the big car. And that was why the big truck couldn't get past the little car. All right, so good luck on your driver's test. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. All right, History Buff. I got my license, and I'm wondering if you have any tips on how to keep a constant speed. History Buff, yes, I do. Learn how to use cruise control, especially out on the roadways. That'll help you out. Don't use cruise control in the city, obviously, but when you're out on a stretch of roadway where you've got, a good distance, then you can learn how to use your cruise control. A lot of people feel that they're not in control of their vehicle when they're using cruise control, and I think what's happened is that they just haven't had enough training to be able to keep a constant speed going around corners and those types of things, because the infrastructure of a roadway, overpasses, trees, shadowed areas, those types of things all impact drivers' speed. And I've taken note of this when I've been driving on the highway, that people will slow down if they go under an underpass. People will slow down if the light condition changes along the roadway. So it's frustrating when you're trying to keep a constant speed and other people are up and down because they're on the fuel pedal and think that they can maintain a constant speed. You cannot keep a constant speed when you get your foot on the throttle. You just can't. Jessica, my brother, said the same thing. He says it's good to use. He uses it. Awesome. We tell your brother thank you. I appreciate him. Tim, heaven forbid slowing down and pulling in behind. Yes, that's one of the things that the truck driver could have done. But then, again, because the truck driver is trying to keep a constant speed of 60 miles an hour in the car in front of him, it's a frustrating situation where the car is up and down and up and down and up and down. but you can't pass because you don't have enough go. So what do? Joe says adaptive cruise control is fabulous. So much less multitasking, frees up the brain cells for other stuff. And yes, and I would agree with what Joe says about that. The car that I rented in Spain when I was there in June had adaptive cruise control. And what happens is that when I drive, you start timing how fast you're coming up on the car in front of you and the relative speed between your vehicle and the vehicle in front. You're looking in the mirror, you're checking the traffic coming up behind you, and you're approaching the car in front, and then you change lanes and move out around it into the other lane, and that way you don't have to cancel cruise control. With adaptive cruise control, it's simply a matter of figuring out where that distance, that 2 to 4 second following distance is in front of you, and then you just change lanes before the sensors pick up that vehicle in front of you, and you won't slow down at all with adaptive cruise control. Now, if you get caught out and there is a car and you can't get over around the vehicle in front of you, then you can, the vehicle will automatically slow down. And as Joe says, then you don't have to do anything. The technology will just slow the vehicle for you until you can get out and around and pass again. Now, there are some downfalls to adaptive cruise control. If you get distracted, you're listening to an audiobook or you get into conversation that you're having with somebody else and you're not really paying attention, you get up behind a vehicle that's doing 55 miles an hour and you've got your cruise set at 65, and then 5 or 10 minutes later you look up and you realize for the last 15 minutes you're doing 55 miles an hour instead of 65 miles an hour. So that might be a little bit frustrating. All right. Elevator, I've seen big trucks cut off other cars. And elevator, yes, that happens too. That sometimes truck drivers do cut off other cars. Not all truck drivers are cut from the same cloth, so to speak. They're not all created equal. And unfortunately, there are truck driving mills out there. There are truck driving schools that don't do a very good job of training drivers. And actually, I would argue, I've been in the truck driving industry for a very long time. I've been in the instruction industry for a very long time. And unfortunately, most of the driving instructors that I've seen are the epitome of those that can't teach. It's just a matter of fact. They're not incredibly qualified to be teaching students. And unfortunately, the new mandatory entry-level training program that's coming into play, as far as I'm concerned, just took the substandard curriculum that they already have and they just added more time to it. They didn't add anything that was going to improve driver quality. They didn't put students in trucks and have them learn how to drive by actually driving the truck. They just increased the classroom time and increased the yard time, which isn't making better drivers on our roadways. Truck driving is not a spectator sport. You have to get in the truck and you have to drive it to be better. So that's just my take on the new mandatory entry level training programs that are coming into place across North America. Gupta, do you own Smart Drive Tests Drive Systems Inc. as well? Gupta, no, I don't. I wish I did. Epic, one more thing about trucks, large vehicles, is that if you are on a 4-lane freeway when a 3-lane freeway narrows down, is that trucks and large vehicles are allowed to use the left lane in PA. Yes, if you have 2 lanes, they can be out in the passing lane, but anything more than 3 lanes, they are limited to the 2 right lanes for the purposes of traffic flow and safety. All right, Tim, on the problem might be that many people think speed signs are marked minimum instead of maximum. No issue with going slower. It is justified. Yes, that's a whole discussion about speed limits and traffic flow and maximums, posted speed limits and whatnot, for sure, Tim. David, in the U.S., some states have separate lower speed limits for trucks on the highways. Like in California, trucks are limited to 55 miles an hour on the highway, while cars can go 65 or 70. And yes, David, you're absolutely right. Same thing in the state of Ohio. Cars are 65, 70 miles an hour, and trucks are limited to 55 miles an hour. And this is another piece about the tension between car drivers and truck drivers. Why do trucks have to go slower? Not sure. Some of these speed differentials where trucks have different speed limits than cars are left over from the OPEC oil crisis in the 1970s, and they never abolished those separate speed limits for cars and trucks in the United States. Gupta, I'm in telematics industry. Anything I could help you with? I don't know. Maybe we'd have a conversation, Gupta. That would be great. William, should you shoulder check your left side instead of fully relying on the left mirror? William, yes. Anytime that you move the vehicle left, anytime you move the vehicle right, you should shoulder check, my friend. Every time you change directions of the vehicle sideways, always shoulder check. Ray, why is maintaining a particular speed better than adjusting speed according to the real-time conditions and infrastructures like curves? Ray, because most of the roads are cambered and are designed for you to be able to do one constant speed. You don't have to slow down on curves, okay? The road is designed that you can go around that curve at 60, 65 miles an hour. So that there's just on highways, most highways, I'm not saying all highways, obviously there are some where you can't maintain a constant speed, but for the most part, I haven't encountered too many freeways or interstates that I can't maintain a constant speed limit on that roadway. Okay? Joe, West Kelowna, how are you, my friend? Elevator on big trucks, do I passes for toll booths? Yes, if they do, they can have those passes. They can have passes for weigh scales as well. You may or may not have seen the weigh scales for big trucks along the highways, the interstates and freeways, and those big trucks and whatnot have to go into those and be weighed because they're only allowed a certain amount of weight per axle on the truck, and then there's an overall weight as well. Thank you, Tim, for doing that for me, my friend. All right. All right, I was looking to see if there were any more questions here as well. Joe, I think at one point on the 401, the OPP would pull over and fine truckers who stayed in the passing lanes too long. That was decades ago. Don't know if they still do it. Joe, yes, they did. Where it goes to 3 lanes there, I think it's at Cambridge. When you're heading east, you are not allowed out in that 3rd lane. So if anything more than 3 lanes, you're not allowed in that 3rd lane. And that's one of the reasons in the trucking industry we call it the bumper lane, which is the right-hand lane, the passing lane, or the fast lane, and then it's the big dollar lane. They call it the big dollar lane because you're going to get a fine if you're out in that lane. And of course, I put the video up telling big trucks that they weren't supposed to be in the left lane passing, and some misinformation out there. Oh yeah, we can be out in that lane, and it's like, no, you can't. Not in BC, not in any province. It may not be enforced, but it is that you're not legally able to be in that lane with a big truck. You're limited to those 2 right lanes in a big truck for purposes of traffic flow and safety, especially on a hill. Stay out of the left lane. Tim, I was thinking that would be just for me, not blocking him for the group. No, we thank you for blocking him. He's being a dork. Okay, David, I have to deal with passing oversized load trucks on the highway before, which can be annoying. Yes, and the other thing, David, when you find oversized trucks and vehicles on the roadway, if it's a certain size, there are specifications because those oversized loads, they have to get a special permit to transport those. So the permit oftentimes will stipulate conditions when the truck can go. It will stipulate conditions of what the weight is, what the dimensions are, how high it is, whether they have to have an escort vehicle. It'll also put in conditions of if the truck can run at certain times. So, for example, it could only run from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning. And on what roads. I think I already said that, but it will specify a route as well for the load to be transported. So those oversized loads, yes, there are very specific conditions for those to be transported. Marty, U.S. railroad strike might happen this Friday, and that will affect Canada. Yes, I suspect it will. But again, railway strikes is not a good thing because then they just put all of that freight onto trucks, and then we have more trucks up and down our roadways. Elevator, I have seen trucks in the 3rd lane in Ohio Turnpike in the state of Ohio, and yes, elevator, Big trucks are going to be out in that big left lane. If I am honest with you, when I drove truck, I was pulled over a couple, 2, 3 times for being out in that far left lane. Because you just get into a cluster and you can't get around the goofy cars, the four-wheelers as we call them, and they're all clustered up and you can't get around them. The only way you can get around them is get out in that left lane. Now, I did get pulled over by Pennsylvania state trooper, and I had another time that I got pulled over by a New Jersey state trooper, but you're not supposed to be in that lane. And it's also unlikely that, if you're cordial with the police officer's not going to write you a ticket for that. They will simply give you a warning and tell you to stay out of the left lane with the big truck. So know that it's not a big deal. Now, for the purposes of traffic flow, and I do encourage most trucks, if you're running through town, stay in the right lane. So other traffic can move around you, other traffic can do what it needs to do. Just hang back, keep that constant speed through town. You want to try and time the lights because, it's different now, obviously, with automatic transmissions and semi-automatic transmissions in these big trucks. But in the day that I was driving, you were shifting gears. And I always told my students when they were learning how to drive a manual truck that's a non-synchronous transmission that, a smart truck driver is a lazy truck driver. You want to try and shift the least amount of gears that you can. So when you're going in through town, you want to keep that constant speed. You want to be trying to make the lights go green. You're timing the lights. You're staying back from the traffic in front of you. You're trying to read and predict traffic patterns in front of you as you're moving through town so that you can keep the vehicle going. Because let me tell you, you're up and down through an 18-speed gearbox all day, up and down and up and down and up and down. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. And, one of my favorite questions when I was teaching truck driving to ask students was, what do truck drivers get paid to do? And they get all kinds of answers about what truck drivers get paid to do. And, they'd say, work safely, drive a truck, blah, blah, blah. My favorite was, drive a truck, because then I would say, well, I don't get paid to drive my car. I drive my car all the time, but I don't get paid for it. And then finally, most of them, I had to say to them, you get paid to move freight and services between point A and point B as quickly as humanly possible. That's what you get paid to do. That's because that's how the trucking company gets paid. You're not paid to drive the vehicle. You're paid to move freight and services. That's what pays the bills. That's what keeps the trucking company in business. So that's what you get paid to do. So it's not a holiday. And as I was saying in the presentation, there's been a lot of romanticization of truck driving. A lot of people just want to know how to drive the truck. They want to go for a ride in the truck. And yeah, they're fascinating. They're huge pieces of equipment. And, for the first year that I drove truck, it was awesome. But then after that, it became work. It was a lot of work to drive truck. And, it's a lot of work to get these things in and around cities without running into stuff and those types of things. And, the industry really hasn't changed a whole lot since the 1990s when I was driving. I mean, yes, now you have GPS, maps and those types of things, electronic digital maps and whatnot. I mean, it makes it incredibly much easier to get to places that you haven't been to before. And now we have cell phones and social media and computers and whatnot that have broken down some of the isolation. But everything else in the trucking industry, it's still the same. It is still the same. Nothing has changed. Okay. Epic. Okay, 70-mile-an-hour cars and trucks. Yeah, so lots of split speed differentials there in different states throughout the United States. Marty 57-foot trailers are in Canada now. They're going to some 60-footers. Marty, I haven't heard anything about 57 and 60-foot trailers. I mean, maybe, but I don't know how you could pull a 57-foot trailer anywhere in an urban area. It's already tough enough to get a 53-foot trailer around. Joe, winter spray from 18-wheelers can be brutal. Topping up windshield washer fluid is just parcel of winter driving. Don't hate truckers for spray instead of top up. Yes, exactly. And the other piece about that, Joe, especially here in British Columbia, you just want to try and stay away from trucks because they're going to pick up all that salt and sand and stones on the roadway, and they're going to kick that up, and they could potentially crack your windshield. So try and get past trucks. I mean, it's no different in the wintertime than it is in the summertime. Don't hang out in the no zone. Don't hang out beside big trucks. Pass them, because you've got a lot more acceleration in your car than the big truck does. And the big truck just wants to do the average speed. They want to be on cruise control, doing the maximum post speed that they can, which is 60 or 65 miles an hour. That's what they want to be doing. They want to be on cruise control, holding the steering wheel, listening to an audiobook, or doing whatever they're doing. So you've got lots of acceleration. Get the vehicle going and get past them. Marty, approximate year, what year was automatic slack adjusters mandatory in Canada? Marty, mandatory slack adjusters was either 1994 or 1993. It was the early 1990s that manual automatic slacks came in. And automatic slack adjusters were the last failing of the air brake system. And even when they became mandatory, they did a study in Ontario, Canada, checking vehicles and equipment that were coming across the scales. And even by that point, more than 95% of equipment had already been fitted with automatic slack adjusters. So they just simply passed a law to do what the industry was already doing on its own without the legislation being passed. So, and now I would say that almost every vehicle is fitted with automatic slack adjusters. I mean, it might be the odd owner-operator that has manual slacks, but I mean, who the heck wants to get under a truck and adjust slack adjusters, every 3 weeks or so? David, due to the height of the truck, they're not permitted on parkways and certain roads in New York City. And David, you are absolutely right. 13 feet 6 inches is what is legally allowed for tractor trailers in the United States of America. So you have to be careful. And as you were saying, New York State, and New York State hasn't changed this law either, is that most other places, almost all other places except New York is the one New York is the one exception, measure from the ground to the top of the truck and its load, whereas New York measures from the center of the hub. So there's a lot of bridges and overpasses in the state of New York where it'll say 12.6, but you can still go under it with a 13-foot 6-inch truck, which is weird. New York likes to be different. There's a few things in New York that are different. Jasmine says you wouldn't be able to drive a truck. Yes, you would, Jasmine. Absolutely, you'd be able to drive a truck. We could teach you how to do that. Joe, they are not making trucks with standard transmissions unless they are ordered that way, is what I am hearing. Joe, yes, the industry is beginning to go to automatic transmissions, mostly for the bigger fleets, mostly in the United States, and mostly when they're running the flat. If they're running heavy or they're running in the mountains, they're still running 13-speed, 18-speed transmissions. Actually, most of them running in the mountains now are running 18-speed transmissions because they're just so versatile and they're robust, and this is the reason that they're doing that. But there are quite a number of trucks now that have automatic transmissions in them, but they require a lot more maintenance than the old manual transmissions. So that's what's happening. Mallory, what is a governor on a big truck? Mallory, a governor limits the speed, so it's a speed governor. So the truck can only do 100 kilometers an hour, 62 miles an hour. They can't go any faster than that, and that's for purposes of fuel economy and safety on the roadways. Because, with a trucking company, the other piece to keep in mind is that you're driving a billboard. The name of the trucking company is right down the side of the truck, especially if you've got a van trailer, one of the boxes, and the name of the truck is on the side of the company. So you don't want the truck to be running down the road at 80 miles an hour because it's bad public image. And of course, everybody's got a camera in this day and age. And I posted that video on TikTok yesterday. Somebody knew exactly which company it was because all the trucks are the same. And they all look the same, and you know exactly which company it is. It's the same as Schneider National in the United States. If you've seen their trucks going up and down the interstate, they're bright orange. You can't miss them. You know it's a Schneider National truck. So you're driving a huge billboard when you're going up and down the road in a tractor trailer. Elevator, I've seen lots of car drivers ignore big trucks. Yes, elevator, and it's not just big trucks that they're ignoring. They're ignoring all kinds of other road users on the roadway and those types of things. Sometimes, I just wonder, if truck drivers have minimal training car drivers have even less training. They're left to their own devices. They get a little bit of training and information, most of it about vehicle controls and how to move the vehicle up and down the roadway, but then they're left to their own devices after they get their license. And within 3 months, they're driving like everybody else on the roadway. And because social driving is a social activity, most of the time, you're going to be okay. You know, you're not going to crash. And because nothing happens, you think you're a safe driver and what you're doing is right. But most people, believe it or not, in this day and age, would not pass a driver's test. Jasmine, is it software that limits the speed? Jasmine, yes it is. It's part of the computer software in the vehicle that limits its speed at the top end. And it's just a computer program. They just plug in the ECU into the ECU and they set whatever speed they want on the truck. History, once I got my permit, I couldn't wait to start learning how to drive with a driving instructor in your videos. They both really helped a lot, and I would recommend your videos to new drivers. History, thank you so much for that. That is awesome, my friend. Marty, approximately what year? Okay, we already answered that question. I would be able to drive a truck. Awesome. Marty, how does Canada do fuel surcharge? Marty, it's pretty much the same across the lower 48 and in Canada. It's simply the big truck, how many miles it drove, and then they do the fuel surcharge according to how much fuel was purchased in that province or state and how many miles were driven, and then there's a calculation about how they figure those two things out about taxes for the purposes of big trucks driving on roadways, because you keep in mind that because of the weight of big trucks, roads have to be repaired more. There's more wear and tear on the roads because of the weight of the trucks. Therefore, how many miles they drive, the fuel, how much fuel they buy, because, a truck may drive through 3 or 4 states, especially on the eastern seaboard, and not buy fuel in any one of those states. So they're going to have to pay a surcharge or taxes, fuel taxes to those states for them to be able to maintain the roads. And of course, this is another huge cost for trucking companies as well. Fixed Toaster, seems like I've almost got clipped by a semi-trailer when they are turning at an intersection while I'm going straight through the intersection. Am I doing something wrong? So when the semi-truck is turning, which way is the semi-truck turning? Just give me a little bit of context there, because it depends on where the truck is, where you are when you're going straight through. Is it a multi-lane road? Are they turning right? Are they turning left? Those types of things. Yeah, because if the semi-truck is turning right, it's going to what's called do a button hook, where it has to move out to the left to be able to get the trailer around. And the reason that they're doing that is to compensate for the off-tracking. Yes. Okay, so Fixed Toaster, yes, they're turning right. So what happens is the trailer tires on the back of the semi take a shorter path than the front of the truck. So they have to move left to get the trailer around the corner to compensate for the off-tracking. So basically what you need to do is you just need to give them some space instead of getting right up against the trailer, and that way you're not going to be in danger of being clipped by the semi-trailer trying to go around the corner. That's what's happening. David, over the summer I was driving through a Pennsylvania Turnpike, and I noticed that sometimes truck drivers can be unstable. The tires hit the center line that separates the lanes due to their size. Yes, David, what you're talking about is that there is less tolerance for a truck in lanes. So in your car might be 9 feet wide, and the lane is 12 feet wide, so there's 3 feet, so there's 1.5 feet on each side of your car. You've got lots of wiggle room there, lots of tolerance to move back and forth. A truck probably only has maybe 6 inches on each side, so there isn't a great deal of tolerance when they're moving side to side, and especially if they're compensating for the off-tracking, the shorter path that the rear tires are taking than the front. So they're going to move over the lines, and that's going to happen a fair bit. And when I teach truck driving, one of the things that I emphasize for truck drivers is top side of the curve, top side of the curve, top side of the curve, due to the fact that the trailer is taking a shorter path through the curve. So if you're going around on a left-hand curve, The truck and trailer has to be to the right of the lane and sometimes right up against the edge of the roadway so that the trailer doesn't drop off into the other lane. And then if you're going right, you're going to move to the left to compensate for the off-tracking of the trailer. This is just common practice when you're learning how to drive big trucks. And part of the issue with training new truck drivers is that the truck driver is so consumed on learning how to drive a manual transmission that the turning, maneuvering the vehicle kind of gets put aside for them to figure that out after they start driving. And for many truck drivers, they run into things, they do all kinds of weird things, drive over fire hydrants, hit parked cars, those types of things, because they don't understand the off-tracking and how much space it takes for their vehicle to be able to get around corners and maneuver safely and those types of things. Marty, you can explain this better. I can. The commercial vehicle tires turn sharper than passenger vehicles. No, I don't. I can't explain that because I don't know what point you're making, Marty. Is that it depends on what kind of tires you have, and it's not always about commercial tires. It depends on whether you pay the extra money to put good tires on your vehicle. It's not about tires, about what turns sharper. There's all kinds of other factors, engineering factors, that will affect whether a tractor trailer or whether a car turns sharper or whatnot. It's going to depend on the turning radius, and then it's going to depend on how fast the vehicle is traveling as well, because as I say again and again and again in my training, is the slower you go, the sharper the vehicle turns. So if you're in a parking lot or those types of things and you want to go slow, then the vehicle is going to turn sharper. It's the same thing, and one of my favorite things to watch is people in parking lots when they're trying to back out of the space, and then they realize that they get really close to the vehicle beside them and they go, well, the vehicle doesn't get smaller. What happens is that they slow down. Because they slow down, the vehicle turns sharper. So big trucks and those types of things, commercial tires, there isn't a great deal of difference between commercial tires and tires that you buy for your vehicle. The only thing that's different is that the tires obviously are bigger and have more weight and those types of things, but it depends on the quality of tire. Depends how much you spend on the tire. Mako, does tanker take an extra license to drive in the U.S.? Yes, it doesn't take an extra license, but it does. You have to get an endorsement to haul tankers in the United States. And with most tankers, you're going to have to get a hazmat ticket as well. Transportation of Dangerous Goods ticket, TDG, to be able to haul tankers, because most tankers are going to pull dangerous goods, especially if you're hauling fuel. DM, I live near Prince George. The chip truck drivers up here try to cut you off when passing way too often to be accidents. Also, on Highway 16 is bad for crashes all year round. Yes, here in British Columbia and Prince George and here where I live, the chip trucks are going up and down the road all the time. And again, it's back to the no zone. And know that most of these truck drivers are working. And the chip trucks, most of these guys are working 10, 11, 12 hours a day. They're driving, they're loading the truck, they're working hard. It's a tough job, especially these chip truck drivers. So, give them space. Don't drive in the no zone. We need to repeat that again. Give them lots of space. If you're going to pass, get past them. And don't dawdle. Don't hang out there. Okay? Mallory, when a big truck is backing up to drop off a load, give it lots of space. Absolutely. Thank you, Mallory. Big Mac Sam, hello, my friend. How are you? Yes, and so lots of space, get past them. And as I said, you have way more acceleration in your car than a big truck is going to have. So know that you can get past them fairly quickly and get out in front of them, get away from them. The other piece about driving around big trucks on highways and freeways is if you're in front of a big truck and you're going down a hill, the big truck is going to gain on you. And this is the other technique that big truck drivers are doing, is that if they're running in the mountains or running in the hills or coming up to a hill, for example, if I'm coming at a Winfield in a big truck and I know that hill is there, I'm going to try and get as much speed as I can coming down the hill so I can get the momentum to get up the other side of the hill. So if you're driving in front of a big truck and you're taking note, which this is the other thing that frustrates most big truck drivers, is that car drivers are not aware of what's going on around their vehicle 360 degrees. They're not aware that there's a big truck behind them, nor are they aware of the fact that they're going downhill. And this I can say with a certain amount of authority, because this was one of the things that I had to teach truck drivers. Uphill, downhill, because going uphill or going downhill is going to affect how you shift. So car drivers, most of the time, are not even going to know that they're going downhill. But if you're aware and you want to be a smarter driver, you're aware that there's a big truck behind you. If that big truck is behind you and you are going downhill, that big truck is going to gain on you because they're going to pick up speed coming down the hill. And if they're doing it right, they're going to try and pick up as much speed as they can coming down the hill so they can get the momentum to get up over the other side of the hill. Because these big trucks lose a lot of speed going up a hill. And eventually what will happen is the transmission will downshift, or the driver will downshift if it's a manual transmission, and they'll eventually get to a gear where the engine can handle the load and pull the truck up that hill. And here where I live, the trucks south of town here go up Dump Hill. It's called Dump Hill because the dump's on the top of the hill. Big trucks go up there, they'll only do 40, 50, 60 kilometers an hour while they're going up that hill because they're loaded and they're going to slow down. So if you're on a big hill, trucks got their four-way flashers on, that means that they're going less than 40 miles an hour, less than 60 kilometers an hour. All right, Tim, have a great night. Enjoy your dinner. All the best, my friend. Joe, agree 100% about the problem with wanton disregard for the safety of others. A colleague of mine from Sarnia used to say all the time, it's nice to be nice. Fabulous advice. And yes, and the other thing that I will add to that, Joe, doesn't take any time out of your day to be nice, especially on the roadway. I mean, what, 2 seconds maybe just to let off the throttle or whatnot? DM, by cut off, I mean move into the oncoming lane to block you from passing. Sorry, should have clarified. Okay, well, DM, if they're doing that on purpose where they're blocking you from passing, that's just completely disrespectful. And my suggestion would be that you get the truck number and call the company and say, listen, this is what the driver's doing. And they'll talk to the driver about that, because that is flagrant disregard for public safety. And they should be, there are, I use the word loosely when it comes to truck drivers in terms of professional drivers, but they should be held to a higher standard. And especially when you're hauling a chip truck, because for those of you who don't know, we have chip trucks out here that make the press board where they take all the wood chips and they make those OSB sheets of, it's not plywood, it's OSB, where they take chips and they glue them together and they make plywood out of them. It's not plywood, but anyway, it's OSB. That's what I'm trying to say. And these are Super Bs. They're loaded out at 140,000 pounds. These guys should not be screwing around on the highway and endangering people's safety. So the truck number is usually on the front of the cab. Most of these chip trucks, it's in huge letters on the trailers. And get the truck number and call the company and say, listen, this is what happened. Explain what happened and say, listen, it was dangerous. They blocked me from passing. So you can call the company and the company will take steps to investigate and discipline the driver if they can substantiate the claim. So the other thing is to pick up a cheap dash cam or run that in your car, and then you have video evidence of what happened. And the other thing, if you're watching on the replay here, CDL drivers, semi-truck drivers, and those types of things, just know that in this day and age, if you're doing something goofy out on the roadways, almost everybody has a dash cam, almost everybody has a camera, and if you're doing something dangerous on the roadway, there is going to be video evidence of that, and your safety department is not going to like you if you're working for a company, and they're going to reprimand you. But at one and the same time, it's a balancing act, because there's companies that are looking for truck drivers, and so they're trying to hire truck drivers. So what are they going to let truck drivers get away with in safety and those types of things? Because if these truck drivers cause a crash where there's serious injury, then there's liability and there's insurance costs and those types of things. So safety departments at big trucking companies are always running that balancing act. Joe, do you have a rule of thumb for picking the right gear to match the downhill grade? Yes, Joe, I do actually. And fifth gear. Start in fifth gear if you're running tandem, and you're running less than 80,000 pounds. So fifth gear, going downhill, Jake brake on full, let it run up 1800 RPM, and then apply the brakes to bring it back down. But if you start in fifth low, most of the time that is going to get you down the hill safely. Now, once you figure it out a little bit, you get familiar with your truck and whatnot, then you can maybe pick a higher gear and those types of things. So don't brake check big trucks. Elevator, don't brake check anybody. It is dangerous, because you could have somebody park in your trunk, and worse yet, somebody could die, because it's a pretty serious game of chicken. Mallory says safety is key no matter what type of vehicle you're driving. Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Marty, a semi-truck's wheels will turn to the side more than a passenger car can cut the wheels to either side. That's not necessarily true, Marty. As I said, it's going to depend on the model and the brand of the truck. Some trucks are terrible. Peterbilt 379s are absolutely terrible in terms of turning radius. You get an International, the turning radius is going to be awesome. So it's really going to depend on which vehicle you're in terms of turning radius, types of tires, all kinds of other factors. What surface you're on, for example, whether it's gravel or whether it's concrete or whether it's pavement. All of these are going to have impact on the turning radius and the turning ability of your vehicle. Joe, what a wealth of info tonight. Rick, don't hang out in the no zone. Button hook when turning right. Thanks so much. Have a fabulous week. Thank you so much, Joe. You as well, my friend. All the very best. Big Mac Sam, how is the weather in the Bronx there, my friend? Is it? Yeah, I'm sure it's coming into fall for you and whatnot. All right, so big trucks. Don't hang around big trucks. And again, the last one, if you're aware, going downhill. Yeah, brake checking videos, and they are crazy. I'm actually going to have to look up some of those, Sam, and see if I can post some of them. Mallory, even though I am a smart passenger, I have learned a lot about big trucks tonight. Thank you so much, Mallory. And if you are watching on the replay, leave a comment down in the comment section. If you have any comments about driving safer, driving smarter, we can definitely help you out with that. If you're going for a license, we can help you out with that as well. Leave your questions, comments down in the comment section there. Drop us a note, and we'll do what we can to help you out. Marty, how do you say plow truck in French? I don't know. I don't speak French. But I'll ask somebody and get that back to you. David, trucks are annoying to deal with on a 2-lane because they obstruct your view. Yes, they do. Feels good with the 70s. So, yes, awesome. All right, so we're going to leave it there for tonight. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave those down in the comment section there. If you got a driver's test coming up in the next couple of weeks, good luck on that. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great night. Bye now. Thanks.
What?
Yeah.
He's
the dog.
awesome.
My mate in Australia says they have a state law protecting trucks turning from the center lane and cars are not allowed to cut them off. Yes, I hadn't heard about that, Mikado, but I'll have a look for that. All right. Good night, everybody. All the best. Take care.
Everybody loves Izzy.